Hi there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shelby and today I'm doing my weekly reading wrap up from August 5th until today, August 11th. This past week I read a total of 9 books and I was participating in the used bookathon which ended on Friday the 9th. I read mostly thrillers this week, but I did read a few arcs as well as some romance sprinkled in. I will link all these books down below and let's get right into it. The first book that I read is Joyride by Lauren Blakely. This is the 5th book in the Big Rock series, but it can definitely be read out of order and as a standalone. I talked about this more in depth in my vlog. I will link it down below if you want to hear about some of these books. This is about a man named Max who 5 years ago he fired someone who worked for him named Henley, and he hasn't seen her since. He owns an auto body shop that makes really customized sports cars, and now for the first time in 5 years he's seeing Henley again, and she is working for a rivaling auto body shop, and they are forced to work together on a really good sports car, and a romance sparks back up between Max and Henley. This one to me really didn't have a lot of character or plot development. I didn't love it at all. It was all through Max's perspective, but there was these random chapters that were to-do lists from Henley's perspective, but other than that we didn't really get anything into her mind. This one was just full of really cheesy, cringeworthy sex. To me it just was not a great book. I ended up giving it 1.5 stars, and this one will definitely be going. The next book that I read is The Perfect Son by Lauren North. I got this as an e-arc, and this one comes out August 13th. This is about a woman named Tess who a few months ago her husband unexpectedly dies in a plane accident, and she's really been grieving and trying to pick up the pieces ever since because she's been left as a single mom to her son Jamie. And we started the story right after Jamie's birthday party, and Tess wakes up in a hospital bed and she's been stabbed and her son is missing. And so we basically go back to where it all began after the husband died, and we kind of count down the days until Jamie's birthday party. After the death of her husband, Tess, like I said, is really grieving, and her mother calls a grief counselor for her, and this woman named Shelly shows up at her house, and the two women become friends. But Tess starts to suspect that Shelly's intentions aren't really pure, and she starts to worry about being in Shelly's presence. And then the second thing that starts to worry Tess is that her brother-in-law Ian, he starts showing up at her house demanding that she gives him money from Mark's estate, and this makes her really uncomfortable, and she starts to suspect that Ian is letting himself into their home when she's not there, and she starts to wonder if both of these people in her life have her best interest or if they want to harm her. So the whole time you're wondering kind of who was responsible for Jamie's disappearance and stabbing Tess. And I found this one to be really good. The main twist in this story I should have guessed, but I did not at all, and I really enjoyed this one. I highly recommend it, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I read is The Nanny by Jilly McMillan. I got this as an arc from Edelweiss, and this one comes out September 10th. This is a very slow burn mystery that follows 2 different timelines. The first is in 1987 at this really large estate. Lady and Lord Holt employ a nanny named Hannah to take care of their little daughter Jocelyn. And one morning Jocelyn walks into Hannah's bedroom and discovers that she is missing and no longer at their home. And she's kind of been wondering ever since what happened to her nanny. And now it is 30 years later, and Jocelyn now goes by Jo, and her husband has just died, and she's left to parent her daughter Ruby alone. But since she was not a US citizen, her and her daughter are forced to move back to her childhood home in the UK and in with her mother, who she has a really estranged relationship with. And while they are there, a skull is found in the lake outside of the home, and it makes Jo start to question who the skull belongs to and really what happened to her nanny Hannah 30 years previously. And like I said, this is a very slow burn mystery. It's very atmospheric, getting into the characters. It just takes a long time to get to the destination. I really enjoyed it. I just wish that some things were a little more shocking or it moved a little bit quicker. But I still enjoyed it, and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. The next book that I read is Listen to Me by Kristen Proby. This is the first book in the Fusion series. And this follows a woman named Addison who is a part owner of this new restaurant called Seduction. She owns it with 4 of her best friends, and the rest of the series follows the remainder of her friends. Addison has had really bad luck in love. She always dates a musician who is a bad boy, and she's recently just got out of a really terrible relationship. She's vowed to never date a musician bad boy again. And in walks Jake into her restaurant. He is actually a really famous rock star, but he hasn't played in 5 years, and he's itching to get behind a mic again. And Seduction is looking for a part-time musician to play on the weekends, and Jake applies to work there. Of course, Addison and him are attracted to each other, but she vows not to date him because she doesn't want to make her same mistakes. But little does she know that Jake is not like the bad boys she's dated before. So this is their romance, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed all the side characters, and I look forward to getting to know them in the series. I thought some of the drama between Addison and Jake was a little bit petty, but overall this isn't full of a lot of angst and drama. It was just really minor. So I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. The next book that I read is Something in the Water by Catherine Steadman. I actually did a buddy read of this with Beth over at Beth and the Books. I will link her down below. This is about a newlywed couple named Mark and Erin. Erin is a documentarian, and she's currently working on a documentary where she interviews 3 different people who are in prison. And Mark works in investment banking, but recently he's lost his job and has caused some financial strain on the couple, especially with an expensive wedding on the horizon. And after the two marry, they decide to go on a couple-week vacation honeymoon to Bora Bora, and it is beautiful. They are loving it. But while they're there and taking a dive, they discover something, and they are faced with an ethical dilemma. And instead of choosing the right path, they end up throwing morals out the window. And we know from the very first chapter that Erin is burying a dead body, and we kind of follow along to see how she gets there in the months that lead up to her burying a dead body and how that relates to their trip to Bora Bora. This, to me, the first chapter was so gripping. I loved how it showed the future of her burying a body, and then we go back previous months to discover what happened. But I found that Bora Bora and everything kind of surrounding it was a little bit boring, really slow paced, and I wish it moved quicker. And by the end, the twist at the end was really good. I enjoyed parts of it, but I really wish a lot of the questions had been answered in regard to this dilemma they were faced with and the situations they got themselves into. There was a lot of open-ended things, and things weren't answered or tied up. So I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. The next book that I read is 800 Grapes by Laura Dave. This one I also read for the readathon, and this is definitely a classic chick lit contemporary novel, perfect for the summertime, and I did enjoy it. This was my first time reading Laura Dave, and this is about a woman named Georgia who several days before her wedding, she uncovers her fiance is keeping a secret from her, and so she flees LA and goes up to Northern California to wine country to go back to her family's winery where her twin brothers and her mom and dad live. When she gets there, she uncovers that her family on all sides have been keeping some pretty gnarly secrets, and it's definitely about the family dynamics and how they tackle these secrets and handle everything, while also Georgia is trying to figure out what to do about her fiance, and it's a lot about personal growth and family dynamics. We also get to see glimpses into the past of what happened with the winery and how it came to be, and kind of the past of this family. This only had a little bit of romance in it. It was mostly about the family dynamics and personal growth, but there was a sprinkling of romance as well. This was cute, but it was not what I was looking for. It didn't delve deep enough into any of those sectors that I mentioned, and so for that reason I gave it 3 stars. The next book that I read is Careful What You Wish For by Hallie Ephron. I got this one as an ARC, and it actually is already published. It came out on August 6th. And this follows a woman named Emily who is a professional organizer, and that is pretty ironic because her husband Frank is a hoarder who he calls himself a collector, but she's really organized and he is not. And she owns this business with her best friend, and they're really trying to take off the business, and they get 2 new clients. The first one is a woman named Ruth who is a widow. Her husband died a year ago, and she's just now getting to go through his things. And she uncovers that her husband had been keeping a storage unit, and she really doesn't want to deal with it, so she hires these people to kind of go through it. And basically when Emily goes to this unit, she uncovers some things there that she's not really comfortable with. She worries that she's going to get involved in some illegal activity. And then the second new client they get is a woman named Quinn, and she has a husband that is really similar to Emily's. He collects a lot of things, and it bonds these 2 women, and Quinn and Emily start to joke what it would be like if their husbands kind of just disappeared. This bites Emily in the butt because a body is found and Emily is thrust into this murder investigation. And this one I found to be pretty good. It wasn't a standout thriller to me. I thought the ending was a little muddled. It seemed like it took a long time to get there, and then at the end it kind of just rushed. And I also didn't think Emily was the smartest of characters. She made a lot of terrible decisions, but then she started putting the pieces together for the police, and based on how she acted previously, she doesn't seem clever enough to have done that. So to me that was just a little out of character, but I still did enjoy it and I liked the premise of this, so I gave it 3.5 stars. The next book that I read is Hate Notes by V. Keeland and Penelope Ward, and I've never read either of these authors before. And this is about a woman named Charlotte who just broke up with her fiance. They had a really terrible breakup, so she decides to sell her wedding dress at a used dress shop. And while she's there, she sees another dress that is really beautiful, and she tries it on, and she uncovers in the lining there is a love note sewn in. And on the top of this note, it says, "From the desk of Reese Easton," and then it has this really romantic note underneath. And she takes the note because it really reminds her that romance has not died, and it gives her some hope. And because she knows the name of the person that wrote this note, Charlotte vows to find who this person is and see if he really is romantic. And fate has it that she actually does meet him, and he is her brand new boss, and he is a total jerk. He is nothing like what this note says, and she is convinced that whatever happened with his breakup must have really changed him. Both Reese and Charlotte have this really fun relationship. They send these notes back and forth to each other in the business setting, and their emails and physical notes, and they're basically hate notes, and they're really sarcastic, and they're messing with each other, but clearly there is attraction there and romance there. And even when they admit they have feelings for each other, Reese is really hesitant to date Charlotte, and she's really worried that he's going to break her heart. And this one I loved. It was so funny, and I loved the banter between the two main characters. It did take a turn for the more serious towards the end, but I didn't mind that. I thought it was really well incorporated, and I gave this one 5 stars. I loved this one. The next book that I read is The Winemaker's Wife by Kristen Harmel. This one I got from NetGalley, and it comes out August 13. This is a World War II historical fiction novel. We follow 2 women in World War II as well as 1 woman in current day. And back in World War II, we follow 2 women. One of them is Inez, and she lives in the Champagne countryside, and her husband owns a winery. And they're basically forced to give their wine and champagne to the Nazis. And the second woman we're following is Celine, and her husband works for Inez's husband, and so they live at the cottage at the winery. And so these 2 women work together, Inez and Celine, and both of them are having troubles in their marriages, and we're basically following how these 4 people are intertwined and how their marriages are intertwined. And then current day is a woman named Liv who just got a divorce. She lives in the US, and she goes to visit her grandma Edith, who is 99 years old, in France. And while she's there, she starts to uncover how her grandma Edith was involved in World War II and the resistance. I really liked Liv's perspective and what's going on currently for her, but I didn't love the past perspectives as much. I really didn't like Inez as a character. I thought she was really selfish and not the brightest, and I just didn't really agree with a lot of the decisions that she made. And Celine was a little more strong-headed. She was half Jewish, and so she was really scared during that time that something would happen to her and her family. She was not the most likable character either, and so I had a hard time sympathizing with either of these women and kind of their situations. And I wish we got to see a little bit more of the exchanges with the Nazis with the wine, and I feel like that was a really unique premise. I never really heard about that before, and something that I really enjoyed learning about. I enjoyed this story, but it didn't emotionally impact me as much as I wanted it to, and so I ended up giving this one 3 stars. So those are all the books that I ended up reading this last week. I'd love to hear if you've read any of these or are hoping to read them. I will link them all down below, as well as my reading blog, and I will see you guys on my next one. Bye.